Thinking about this sounds kind of dumb, but maybe not. You know, you read Hebrews 11, all these men of faith, and the things that they did. You read about all the men and women in the scripture that did great things for the kingdom of Yahweh and for Yeshua. And they all had one thing in common at least, right? They all had a mother. Did they not? And we've heard a little bit from Adrian's reading about that. I just want to say to all our mothers, you have my deepest respect and my utmost, I don't know how to put it, just amazement at what you do and how you do it. Doesn't mean moms don't make mistakes. Does mean, though, that moms are probably quicker to admit their mistakes than dads are, but you know. All right. I just felt like talking about this year. I really haven't done it before. We usually just give acknowledgement to our moms and stuff, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit today because I think it's important, especially in light of the times we're in. And I feel like I am more uniquely qualified to talk about mothers than a lot of people, because I can tell you what happens and what it's like when you don't have one. And I had one till I was 7, but after that, I didn't have one. I had a great dad. You know, Father's Day comes, I'll acknowledge more about that. But I had a great dad. I have no complaints about my father. But I didn't have a mother. Neither my brother nor I. I wouldn't exactly say we were terrors of the neighborhood. But, you know, we were children of renown. Let's just put it that way and leave it there. I think I would love to have had the opportunity at least, to see what I would have been like at this point in my life. And how much better I would have done and better I would have been if I had a mother's influence in all those years. There is something that you miss. I had a great dad again, but there are things that only a mother can give you. So I just wanted to say that before we got started. Every day should be Mother's Day. You know, the things that you do, the management, the care, the medical attention, the counseling, mending broken hearts. Some of you haven't had to deal with that yet, but it's getting there. You know. I think it's a great thing to do. In fact, I think that moms, what you're doing, in my opinion, it's the single greatest thing you'll ever do in your life. You could go out and cure cancer. That'd be great, wouldn't it? You could go out and bring world peace. Not really. Only Yeshua could do that. But you know what I mean. You could go out and accomplish great things and become famous and everything else. But that won't even compare. It won't even come close to what you're doing as a mother. It is by far, in my opinion, the single most important thing you'll ever do in your life. And it should be praised, I believe. Isaiah 66:13. It's the very last chapter in Isaiah. This is Yahweh speaks, talking about, let's go to verse 12. For thus says Yahweh, behold, I will extend peace to her like a river, and the glory of the Gentiles like a flowing stream. Then you shall feed, on her sides shall you be carried, and be dandled on her knees. You ever see, how many times have you seen a mom with a little baby and she's talking to someone, she's got him hanging on her hip, right? Just holding on to him. Didn't know that was a biblical thing, did you? On her sides you shall be carried and be dandled on her knees, as one whom his mother comforts. So I will comfort you, and you shall be comforted in Jerusalem. Amen. Hallelujah. This is a prophecy about Jerusalem. It's a prophecy about the end result, what Jerusalem's going to have because of Yahweh. But I think that it's really interesting to me that first of all, like I said, I think motherhood is one of the greatest calls of Yahweh. You know, Paul had a mother. Peter had a mother. All the apostles had a mother. I don't know what happened to Judas. He had a mother too, but, I don't think that was her fault. He made a choice. But they all had mothers. And you know what? Without taking anything away from who Yeshua is, he has a mother. He had a mother. Okay? Motherhood's one of the greatest calls of Yahweh. And it's interesting that here, at the end, this whole message through Isaiah about Yahweh's goodness and his love for Israel and, the things that are going to happen to them and the things he's going to do on their behalf and all of this, he ends it like this. He chooses the image of a mother to describe his own love, his own passion and compassion for Jerusalem. And I don't know. I think that's pretty significant. He doesn't use a father. Not taking anything away from dads. He doesn't use a father. He uses a mother. He could have said parents. Could have said father and mother, but he didn't. He said mothers. And he chooses the image of a mother to describe his love, his passion, his compassion. Yeshua did that on a couple of occasions. Remember the one where he looked over at Jerusalem and he had this twinge and he said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I would that I could gather you under my wing like a mother hen gathers her chicks. Again, Yeshua is using an example of a mother in his tenderness and his love for Jerusalem and for Israel, the Jewish people, and for all of us. You know what? Let's just take a moment and think about what mothers do. Mothers give comfort. Comfort when you skin your knees, you fall on your... I fell once. I was about 8. Less than a year after my mom died, but I fell on my face. I mean, on my face. And I still have a chip in this tooth from that. It was summertime. Dad was at work. My brother, he was all right once he stopped laughing. But he was okay. But there's nothing like would have experienced had mother been there, had mom been there. To take you up and hold you and rock you, whatever it is you needed, and then bandage it up, put something on it, bandage it up, kiss it, all of that. Doesn't sound like much. You think, well, what's the big deal about that? I'll tell you what the big deal about it is. It's a big deal when you don't have it. So it's a big deal, especially you kids that are here, and your mom, it's not just your mom helping you to feel better or holding you when you're hurting or you're scared or whatever. She's reflecting Yahweh and his love to you. Mothers give comfort. They speak life. Every year when I became an adult, which was last week pretty much, no. Every year, after I became an adult, on Mother's Day, I gave my dad a Mother's Day card. Every year. Because he did the best that he could, but not being a mother, there are things he couldn't do, but he sure tried, and I thought he deserved it. But you know what? And he did this. He spoke life by how he lived, by how he lived, and by the things he said and how he encouraged us. You know, no one can make you. These aren't the exact words, but this is the gist of his message to us. No one can make you feel bad about yourself without your permission. You know, that's one thing. That but I wonder, what would my mom have said? You know, I just don't know. So I think every kids here, hear me good on this one. Every day, be sure you hug your mom and tell her how much you love her, because she deserves it, because you have no idea what it would be like if she were gone. Moms speak life. You can be, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say this, and most of the time, it was their mother who told them this. You can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you set your mind to do. And nobody can tell you you can't do something, because you can. That's, mothers speak life. Mothers hold families together. I'm not saying dads don't. They do their part, but, you know, in the olden days, you know, even when I was a kid, which isn't really olden days, but it feels like it now. But dads went out and worked, and typically moms stayed home and ran the house and raised the kids. And they were the disciplinarians. They were the doctor/nurse. They were the nutritionist. They were, you name it. Moms, I think, were the first Uber. You know, kids needed. When I remember every Sunday, a bunch of us kids would get together and let's go see a movie. All right, so we go home and ask our parents. We get our $2 so we could get in and get snacks too. And who took us? One of the neighbors, one of our parents, and it was almost always our mothers. And I was 4 when the whole gang came out of the theater and got in the car. My mom had sent me in to get them, and they didn't know I wasn't in the car, and they took off. I'll tell you what, I could have used my mom right about then, because this was a 4-lane busy street. I had to walk all the way down. It seemed like forever, but it was about 5 blocks. So I got to this big avenue. 2 lanes on one side, 2 lanes on the other, and in the middle there was a kind of underpass, and it was the highway. So there's no way I was crossing that at 4 years old. So there was a drugstore. I walked in crying, and, you know, my mom must have called the police because they came and showed up, and, you know, I can still remember sitting between these 2 cops in the front seat. 4 years old. My mom must have been freaked out. She still left me. No. Mothers hold families together. Except when you forget them, but they hold families together. So think about this. Mothers give comfort. Mothers speak life, right? Mothers hold things together. Who does that sound like to you? I don't know. To me, it sounds a lot like Yahweh, doesn't it? It sounds a lot like what Yahweh does. And while we can look at these things, and these are motherly instincts, these are maternal attributes, and some might see them as a weakness. You know, big macho guys might see that, you know, that's what the moms do, and then that's all they can do. There's a weakness there. That's not a weakness. You know what it is? It's a divine reflection. It's a reflection of Yahweh. It's a divine reflection of his attributes. Right? He gives comfort. He sent the Holy Spirit. What does he do? One of the primary things he does is to comfort. He speaks life. That's what he's doing here, speaking through Isaiah, speaking life. He holds things together, and he holds families together. His name, the name in whom all the families of the earth are named. We could also say held together. Adrian mentioned this one. We go to 2 Timothy. Chapter 1. Verse 3. I thank Yah, whom I serve with a pure conscience, as my forefathers did, as without ceasing I remember you in my prayers night and day. If you look at verse 2, he's writing directly to Timothy, not to a church. Greatly desiring to see you, being mindful of your tears, that I may be filled with joy when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother, Lois, and in your mother, Eunice, and I am persuaded is in you also. Now, I can identify a little bit with some of that. My grandparents, both sides of my family. I had the Armenian side, grandfather and grandmother, and the Romanian side, my grandmother. My grandfather, he was an alcoholic. He was pretty bad. He was good. He was okay with my brother and I, but he was pretty, he was a drunk, a mean drunk. But my others, my grandmother, I remember after my mom died, and I go over to see my grandmother, my Armenian grandmother, and she would just stare at me and smile. It kind of freaked me out as a kid. But she kind of stared at me and would just smile. Because Grandma couldn't speak hardly any English. So that was her communicating. That was her comforting. That was her way of kind of speaking life into me. I thought about it as I got older and became an adult, and I think about that every once in a while. I thought, that was her loving me, And, my mom, I again, you've heard my testimony. I don't have a whole lot of memory, so I can't speak to that. Timothy's legacy was one I call a quiet world changer. He was timid Timothy. Paul would talk to him about, he would write about that, the fact that he was timid. But he was a world changer. We think, Timothy was this kind of weakish kind of guy, but Timothy was an apostle. Timothy helped start churches. Paul would start churches, and he would put Timothy there, and Timothy would stay there, and he would minister to them, and he would help them grow, and he would identify and raise up leaders so that he's ready to go to the next place. And when Paul was gone, Timothy just kept it all going, with others, of course. His legacy was as a quiet world changer, but it began with his mother's influence and his grandmother's influence. I don't know what the thing was with his father and his grandfather. They might have been in the picture. They probably were. But there was something about Timothy's mom and his grandmother. I like to think that. There was something about my mom and my grandmother. I know that she put some things in me when we were little. I don't know what it was, but I think had I had the opportunity, I would have been a better person, done better with whatever Yahweh's called me to do if I had that influence. I just keep repeating it because I want kids to realize how important their mothers are. I don't know if Lois and Eunice thought about this when they were putting things in Timothy, when they were encouraging him and, building him up and planting seeds in his heart, whatever it was that they did. I don't know that they thought about this. But what they were doing was they were building something eternal. Well, I don't know anything about them after this, just this mention of them. And once Timothy follows Paul, I don't know how often he saw his mom and grandma, how long they lived. Maybe Paul must have known them, so they were probably still alive for that period of time anyway. But at some point, they're gone. And maybe, I don't know how they thought. Maybe they had very little when they passed. But you know what? They had a grandson and a son who was doing great things for the kingdom of Yahweh and proclaiming the good news of Yeshua all over the known world. Because he traveled with Paul when he went to Spain and other places, maybe even up to England. I don't know if Timothy was with him when he did that. But a mother's love and faithfulness builds things that are eternal. There are things that kids are, you kids and the kids that aren't here, and our kids that are grown up, there are things that have been put in them and in you that are eternal. Nothing's going to change. You're going to go through things in life. They're going to be hard. They're going to be difficult. You're going to feel like quitting sometimes, but you're not going to quit. Why? Because some of that has to do with what your mothers have put in you. And these things are often unseen. They're uncelebrated. And believe me, I think they're underestimated by the world, except on Mother's Day. Somebody got the great idea. They go, moms are really important. Let's make a day for mothers and we can sell stuff. And they've been doing it ever since. It's good that they do, but that's why I say every day should be Mother's Day. Often unseen, uncelebrated, and underestimated, except in heaven. Yahweh has a special place in his heart for mothers. I don't know. I wish that you could, I hope that you can really grasp that Yahweh has a special place in his heart for mothers. And never forget that. He sees it. He sees what you do, and he honors it. He's honored it here in Isaiah. What was that? 600 years before Yeshua came, he's giving honor to mothers by using mothers as his example of his own love and passion and compassion. Well, we can't talk about mothers without talking about Yeshua's mother. Doesn't it seem kind of strange sometimes to say Yeshua's mother? I mean, it kind of does. But the fact of the matter is, he had a mother. And when you read about the account in which the angel visits Miriam, and speaks to her and tells her what's going to happen and tells her about her son and what he's going to be and who he's going to be and all of these things. And Mary's response, it's such an amazing story. But these are not unlike the attributes of every mother who loves Yahweh and who loves their children. So, let's see here. So the angel comes, he speaks to her, he tells her, here's what's going to happen, here's how it's going to happen. You're going to have a son, you're going to call his name Yeshua, he's going to save his people from their sins, all these things. And, okay, keep in mind, I don't know what people picture Mary as, maybe she was in her mid-20s, just got her degree in college and ready to start a career. And you want me to do what? It wasn't like that. She was very young. It was typical in that day. She was betrothed to Joseph, and betrothal took place often at 13, 14 years old. I'm not saying she was that young, but I'm not saying she wasn't either. It just happened often at that age. Then when they got older, 16, then they were married. So it's possible Mary was still a teenager when all of this happened. And all of that, Mary says, behold, the maidservant of Yahweh. Let it be to me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. And I think as he was leaving, he's thinking, yes, this is the right person. This is the right mother for this job, for this responsibility. And I think every angel that ministers to us, that ministers to you as a mother, probably says the same thing. This was the right woman, the right person for this for these children. You know what? Mary gave up a lot. We don't think about that part of it, but you don't think she had, I don't know the mindset of people back then, especially young people back then, but I think it's pretty typical through the generations that young people have plans, they have dreams, whether they saw them or not. It doesn't really matter, they had them. Mary had her own plans. She had things to think about. What about her reputation? She's not even married yet, and she turns up pregnant. What do you think that did to her reputation? You know, there are some written accounts that Yeshua was called illegitimate by a lot of people that knew his story. You know, grow up with that. She had her reputation, and she had her future, and she surrendered them all to Yahweh's purposes. Let it be to me according to your word. I think that's the prayer of every mother. You know, maybe you don't say those exact words. Maybe mothers don't say those exact words, but they're there in your actions. They're there in your thoughts. Motherhood isn't just a passing time in your life. It's not just, the last one's grown up and they're gone and they're out on their own or they're married now. There's another woman in his life. But it doesn't end there, does it? Motherhood doesn't have a time limit. It's not a passing moment or time in your life. Motherhood is a divine, lifelong calling. And you're fulfilling it. And like any calling of Yahweh, he equips those that he calls. Now, I don't think there's anyone, male or female in this room, but especially moms, parents, anybody who's helped raise somebody, who isn't thinking about the mistakes you've made. I do that more than I care to recount. But we've both told our kids as adults, we told them, look, we know we made mistakes. We made mistakes when we were raising you guys, but I can guarantee you this, with Yahweh as my witness, that even in the mistakes we made, we were motivated by our love for you. But like any calling of Yahweh, he equips those he calls. Apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, teachers, deacons, mothers. It's a calling. It is a ministry. Accept it as that. And mothers are uniquely like Yeshua because motherhood is all about serving. Motherhood is serving. You serve by caring for your children, your family, your home. It's an act of service. Lastly, Exodus chapter 20. Verse 12, 10 commandments, or as people like to say today, the 10 suggestions. The 10 commandments. Verse 12, honor your father and your mother. That's a good place to stop just for a moment. Honor your father and your mother. I had somebody ask me once, and they were an adult, it was an adult woman, asked me, not from here, from the Rideout Church, but she was asking me about, how do I still have to obey my mother? It says honor your mother, your father and mother. When I think I need to do something different, I said, when we become adults, this is my interpretation of this. Take it for whatever you want. But I honor my father and my mother by living a life that's worthy of their sacrifices and the things that they've done for me, and by my service to Yahweh and doing it as best as I know how, and living that kind of life, I honor them. Honor, it's not a suggestion. Because he says, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Okay, kids, here you go. How long do you want to live? You want to live for a really long time? You know what? By the time you're my age, they're going to have so much medical discoveries and new technologies, you could live to be 120 with no problem. You'll still be playing baseball at 100 years old. Or whatever else it is that you do. Why? You want that? Here's what Yahweh said. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land. Want to live for a long time? Honor your mother. I'll get to fathers next month, but honor your mother. Being a mother is holy work. Hey, it's kingdom work. You know, it's kingdom work. Women who mother, whether it's children that they birthed, or in our case, children that we adopted. I can guarantee you that we don't love our children any less because they were adopted. You don't love yours more than we love ours just because ours were adopted. The point is we love our children. I used to tell before Kimberly came along, and the boys were younger, and from time to time the idea of being adopted would come up. And I'd say, look, if we had how did I put it? If your mother gave birth to a child now, he would be our third child, our third born. You guys are the first one. So whether you're a mother through birth, giving birth, or adoption, you are participating in Yahweh's redemption story. In fact, you're playing a vital part in it. What you're doing now, there's a line in the movie Gladiator. And at the very beginning, he said, what we do here echoes through eternity. Okay, that was a nice thing to say to your troops before you go into battle. No, what you do now, what you're doing here, what you're doing with your children, your grandchildren, doesn't end when they grow up and they have kids of their own. What you're doing is what echoes through eternity. And you are participating in the redemption story of Yahweh by doing that. And you know what? Children and husbands are all the better because of mothers. Yahweh bless you and prosper your Mother's Day and the year ahead. In Yeshua's name.